Good morning and welcome to our Good Friday family reflection. A few weeks ago, just before we went into lockdown, some children from Kingsnorth Primary School came into the church to talk about Easter with me, and we did some brainstorming and they came up with all sorts of words that link into Easter. We had things like Easter eggs and the Easter bunny and the Easter chick, and of course we did get down to talking about the cross and hot cross buns and all sorts of things like that, which was really good. And it got me thinking about Easter. And most Easters, for a long time now, I've made an Easter garden. So I made one this year, and I've put a picture of this up on my on our Facebook page. But in the process of making it, four thoughts came to me from the Good Friday story. So I'm going to start just by telling a little bit of the story, which comes from Matthew's Gospel. And it says that some Roman soldiers took Jesus into the governor's palace, and they got the entire brigade together for a bit of fun at Jesus' expense. And it says that they made a crown from branches of a thorn bush and set it on his head. Now, I was out in the garden doing a bit of pruning, and I pruned a rose bush, and I made a crown of thorns, and here it is. And as I was making it, my son, he said to me, "Dad, you're not going to put that on your head, are you?" And I said, "No, you must be joking. Why on earth would I do that? It would be far too uncomfortable and painful." But that's exactly what they did to Jesus. It was very cruel, and they were very, very unkind and really unpleasant towards him. It says they put, as well as the crown of thorns on his head, they put a stick in his hand for a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mocking reverence. "Bravo, King of the Jews," they said, "bravo." And they spat at him, and they hit him on the head with the stick. And when they'd had their fun, they took off the toga and put his own clothes back on him. And then they proceeded out to the crucifixion. So it was really horrible, really, really cruel and unpleasant. But I think, as Jesus knew, worse was to come. Because it then says, after they had finished nailing him to the cross and were waiting for him to die. So they nailed him to that cross. And as I was clearing out my garage, I did come across this quite chunky, I think that's probably a 6-inch nail, very rusty, not very nice at all. But that's what they did. They got nails similar to this, I guess, and they literally nailed Jesus to a cross. And, you know, I like hitting a nail into a bit of wood for a bit of fun and making something useful to it. But the thought of just banging that through someone's flesh really isn't any fun at all. Quite barbaric and unpleasant. So my second thought was, after the crown of thorns, I thought to the nail that held Jesus onto the cross. And it says they posted above his head the sign that said, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." And of course they meant it in irony. They didn't believe that at all. And criminals were executed alongside him, and people passing down the road jeered at them. They bragged that you could tear down the temple and rebuild it. Well, show us your stuff. Save yourself. If you're really God's son, come down from that cross. And there we have the third thing, and maybe you can see it already, a hot cross bun. So here I have my hot cross bun with that cross on it, which to the Romans was a sign or a symbol of torture, of cruel execution that even they abandoned a while later because it was so cruel. But to me, the cross, a sign of God's love. Jesus came to save me, because of the things that we've done wrong, because of the darkness in our lives. We end up being separated from God. Yet God, who made us and who loves us, doesn't want us to be separated. And the only thing he could do to restore that friendship, that relationship with him, was to send Jesus to rescue us. And the cross, for me, is a sign of God's love, of the ultimate sacrifice that Jesus had to pay. He loved us so much, he wanted us so much to be back with his Father, that he was prepared to die on that cross. So there's my third thing. And it says that the high priests, along with the religious scholars, were right there in the mix. He saved others, he can't save himself. and they were cruel too. And the criminals who were crucified alongside him, one of them was mocking him too. And Jesus felt utterly alone and utterly abandoned. And he says, as he's close to death, he says, my God, why have you abandoned me? Believing even that his Father had abandoned him. That's how alone he felt. And all sorts of extraordinary things were going on. There was an earthquake. It went dark. A curtain tore in two. Strange things that people couldn't really explain. One Roman soldier said, maybe, just maybe this man was the Son of God. No other man we've executed has died quite like this. There's something strange going on here. And Jesus' friends wanted to get him off the cross. They wanted to bury him quickly. And they got some help from some other people. And they had him put in a tomb, and a stone was laid across the entrance. So I found this stone. And my wife Jackie said, do you remember the stone that we've got on the side by the kitchen table? That would do the trick, wouldn't it? So I went to get the stone, and then I realised that actually we must have used this in the past for another Easter garden, because in my daughter's handwriting it's got joy and hope and peace and grace written on this stone, which must be why we kept it. And Freya has inked over them again because they'd begun to fade. So I'm reminded that they placed a stone over the tomb. And I found also on this stone, and I'm stealing the Sunday morning story now, but Caroline will carry on this story. It says, he is risen, because that's the next bit of the story. So a stone, a cross, a sign of God's love for me. The nail that held Jesus to the cross, and the crown of thorns. 4 things that remind me of the Good Friday story. And we'll let Caroline carry on the story on Sunday morning as we remember that last bit. He is risen. That's why Good Friday is Good Friday. Perhaps it wasn't a good day in some respects, but it's the beginning of a great story, one that's worth telling again and again. Thank you.